the recording.
Hello, everyone. This is Jose Rivera, CSIA CEO. Thank you for attending the November CSIA webinar. Today's webinar will provide you with Demystifying Smart Manufacturing, Getting Past the Hype to Reality by Mike Yost, the President of Mesa International. Be sure to ask questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box. Questions will be answered during the webinar, so be sure to ask them. The webinar will be archived for later viewing, and the slides will be available also. The host and sponsor of our monthly business topic webinar is Software Toolbox, a CSIA partner member. Software Toolbox understands that you are not just buying software licenses, but are investing in a relationship where you depend on your suppliers to be there every step of the way. Software Toolbox encourages its integrator partners to think carefully before writing custom code. Custom, one-off applications are filled with risk and hidden costs when evaluated over the typical 10-year automation system lifecycle. Software Toolbox highly configurable, off-the-shelf software products and support services are proven to provide system integration, lower risk. In keeping with today's themes, the reality of the market is that there are users who monitor their operational performance with paper and spreadsheets. They often do this because the cost of performance monitoring software licenses and implementation is beyond the reach of their budgets. Faced with these limits, the user keeps using Excel and paper or ends up with a homegrown solution. Equipment Effectiveness Suite, or EES, is a software package that transforms users' decisions from speculative to fact-based results. Empowering their lean manufacturing environment, EES reveals insightful, unbiased availability, performance, and quality production information, open, scalable, cost-effective OEE reporting from any browser. You can implement, and users can start using actionable information within 7 days. Learn more at softwaretoolbox.com/EES. I would like to introduce today's webinar presenter, Mike Yost, President, Mesa International. Mesa is the Manufacturing Enterprise Solutions Association. CSIA and Mesa have collaborated in the past and plan to continue to do so in the future. Some of our members are also Mesa members. As a matter of fact, Keith Unger, Principal Consultant from StoneTech, a simultaneous member of CSIA and Mesa, will be joining us towards the end of this webinar to kick off the Q&A session. So without further delay, here is Mike Yost.
Thank you, Jose, and good morning, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with everybody and talk about this topic. As Jose said, we have been talking for some time about the role of systems integrators in the work that Mesa is doing, and I'd like to introduce Mesa to everybody so you know who we are, what we're doing, and again, the work that we're trying to drive together with CSIA. Before I do so, just by quick biography on myself, I've been in the automation and industrial software industry for 24 years, having started as an automation sales guy, and working eventually for a systems integrator that was deploying manufacturing execution systems and automotive build line systems in automotive build line environments, excuse me. And eventually, as the industry evolved and I moved from the controls arena into more of the software space, my career took me into manufacturing intelligence environments as well as production management or operations management type of solutions on a global scale, and I have spent the past 4 years working for Mesa International. And so with my background from a controls perspective and an integration perspective, the topics that are hitting us, that are in front of us today, that have the world's attention captivated right now on manufacturing, I think are grounded very strongly in the work that this community does. And so those are some of the things that I want to talk about here today. So very quickly, to introduce Mesa International, we are a 24-year-old nonprofit industry association, and we live at the intersection of where manufacturing meets IT. So the implementation of information technologies and IT-based solutions. Our focus is to understand what the business value is at that intersection and to help people understand both the role and the business value of implementing IT-based solutions in production operations. We talk about building bridges of understanding from the plant to the enterprise. We'll spend some time here over the next 45 minutes or so talking about the technologies that are in front of us and the discussions that are taking place in industry and such. But really, from my perspective and from what we see inside of Mesa, the work for us today is to really bridge the knowledge gap that exists between the plants and the enterprise. We came up with the P2E slogan a little over a decade ago. At that point, we were talking very much about a technical discussion of how do you wire the plants to the enterprise. And that conversation is largely behind us now, and we're talking much more about how do we, from an operational perspective, from an organizational perspective, get people to undertake this journey. And the technology has largely gotten out of our way in some respects to where we're now focused much more on helping people understand the fit and how we actually go and do these things. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit industry association. We have members in over 40 countries. Many of them are systems integrators. As Jose mentioned, Keith Unger from Stone Tech is with us. He's a member, an active member inside of Mesa. And being part of Mesa, to that bottom bullet point there, our focus is always to provide a safe, non-commercial environment for manufacturers, solution providers, consultants, software vendors, hardware vendors to come together and focus on what is important for them. So it's a place where people talk all the time about wearing multiple hats. Inside of Mesa, wearing the Mesa hat, it is a safe harbor, a safe environment for people to network and attack the problems that are important to them in their businesses. I refer to this chart as the operating model for Mesa, sort of how we roll, what we do. And really the most important point is down at the bottom, where we really work to speak with a unified voice for industry's practitioners. So the folks that have been doing this, the people that have been deploying solutions in production operations for years and leveraging them to come together. We live in a very fragmented space. As they said in the introduction, the dangers of point solutions and the approach to custom solutions and such. We've been living that environment for decades, and so as a result, we have a very fragmented space where the manufacturers, the solution providers, everybody's sort of in their own silo, trying to change the world and trying to prove their worth and their business value. And what our role is to come together in a safe environment where we can speak with a louder voice. And so we do that through the three levers in the middle of the slide here, and that is we provide the opportunity for peer-to-peer networks. Our community, typically then people find an area of focus for them and rally around either regional or topical areas that they want to focus on, and they end up in committees, working groups, special interest groups, et cetera. And they work together to share their points of view across the different dimensions that are represented, and then really shape what becomes Mesa's point of view. So if it's an area like lean manufacturing or quality or metrics or return on investment or smart manufacturing, the bodies, the people that represent that working group will then create content that is peer-reviewed and published as a benefit of Mesa membership, and those become Mesa's points of view on those particular topics. The third lever is the Global Education Program, which we rolled out about 4 years ago, as we found that we really need to establish a global baseline of knowledge so that we can get the consumers, the buyers, and the sellers on a common plane and understanding so that we can get people up the curve much more quickly and understand the business value and get started. And again, the goal with all of that is that we would drive towards an understanding across the industry to people understand why they want to do this, and then also have the means to go ahead and invest in these types of solutions. So I'm going to work pretty quickly here to try to get to the theme of today's discussion and try to simplify and demystify smart manufacturing as quickly as I can. So I'm going to talk here in just a minute. The slide is a slide that we use to really position how we feel smart manufacturing, what pieces, parts need to be in place, and what pieces, parts Mesa directly can work on in the environments we have to make smart manufacturing a reality. So if you look at the bottom of the slide, this really represents sort of the foundation of who Mesa is. I talk about that safe harbor, that beacon where it's safe for people to come and work together. Those levers we talked about a minute ago, the education, knowledge sharing, the networking. And it's really through the lens of what is important to the manufacturers or producers. What are the business drivers? Responsiveness, reliability, operational agility, things like that are driving companies. And at the top, you'll see that, obviously there's a technology infrastructure piece of it, whether you're working in an area of, MES, MOM, new initiatives, new platforms that are coming out all the time, to deliver these types of solutions. What are the elements that are required to make that happen? So we talk about in the middle of this slide, which we'll fill in here in a second, of the pieces that are required to make smart manufacturing a reality, or to make really any of these terms, if you can see these as they come in, because that's another area I'll talk about in a second, that because of the fragmentation, because of the reality that oftentimes the technology providers are out in front of the manufacturers, you end up with all sorts of different terminology. And so you'll see things here like digital transformation, smart manufacturing is here, people talking about the connected enterprise, Industry 4.0 being an industry initiative that's being led out of Germany, but having a global impact. These are all terms that are flying around and people are aligning themselves with. And from our perspective, from a Mesa perspective, again, our charter is to really rally the industry together so that we can provide some clarity, demystify all of this stuff, and give people practical steps that they can take to move down this path. So in that vein, and what we are looking for, or what we believe is required to make smart manufacturing a reality, and that's what we'll focus on here in the discussion going forward. I have about 3 research studies that I'm going to hammer through for everybody here and show what the world is talking about, show the types of scale and value that people are estimating that these types of initiatives can deliver globally, and then really ground it back to the work that happens at the controls level. So, these 3 pillars that we have listed here, coming left to right, the first is the market preparedness. I mentioned before the fragmented space that we live in and work in consistently, and how we have different terms and no common vocabulary, and really a limited understanding of the business value, why you invest in these types of solutions, and who do you trust, and how do you go forward. So that's an area where we are focused on delivering the types of things identified on the slide there, and get people talking and move past the fact, or move past the discussion of manufacturers wondering, should I do this? And getting to the point of saying, I know I need to do this, but what do I need to do, and who do I do it with? The center column is around the solutions guidance. All the talk about big data, all the talk about enterprise analytics, all of the things we'll be talking about in just a minute, very valuable, very important. But when you get down to the production operations level, there's bits and bytes that are flying all around in production environments. We need to give them some context. We need to drive operations at the plant floor level, at the operations level, provide that context, and true enterprise interoperability, so that the business understands what's going on and the business can do some of those higher level things. And then most specifically to the audience here today, and what we're talking about is the practitioner readiness piece of it. And that's where, from the beginning, Jose and I have been having conversations, and I say from the beginning, I mean with regard to really smart manufacturing hitting the the marketplace and being a driver that's driving our activities, who's going to put these types of solutions in place? Who is capable of providing scalable solutions? How do you work with a global organization that needs support on a global scale, and it needs to go across industries, across geographies, all the way down to the plant level. And obviously, I believe that the systems integrators, the control systems integrators, have a significant role that they can play in that area. And it's garnered largely around the need for data. As I mentioned before, the systems that are being put in place at the controls level, the information that's being produced there, that is information, or that's potentially information that the enterprise, that the businesses want to leverage for them to take manufacturing where they think it can under the umbrella of smart manufacturing and these other types of initiatives. So as we jump into understanding what the marketplace is saying together, or what the marketplace is saying, it ends up a pretty tough story to follow. I mentioned some of the names and some of the conversations and things that are going on. This is a word map, a typical type of word map that you see people talking about, the future of manufacturing and all of these pieces, parts that are hitting us with data and analytics, and the amount of data that's hitting us, and predictive analytics and things along those lines. So it's coming at us fast and furious. And so what we have done inside of Mesa, as I mentioned before from our operating model, is we've started a working group, specifically titled the Smart Manufacturing Working Group. And one of the perspectives that they have, one of the first things that they produced, that they are working on releasing a white paper on identifying the landscape around smart manufacturing. And one of the things that they said is that while fundamentally what manufacturers are trying to do hasn't changed a lot in the last 100 years, the expectations of what they can do is growing exponentially. And I think that is a big thing for us to recognize, a big opportunity for us to recognize. And I would also say that we need to be grounded in the fact that this is not necessarily a new vision, not necessarily a new concept that people are trying to collect data and be smarter and move forward with more responsiveness, more agility than they have in the past. That's been one of the core value propositions of the MES space, or the Manufacturing Enterprise Solutions space, since its beginning. But that doesn't mean that we can sit back and say that we've been doing this for years and there's nothing new here. We can move on. This hasn't changed. That is a dangerous position for us to take as well, because there are new technology advances that I think are really turbocharging this vision. The devices, the Internet of Things, the cloud technologies, the big data analytics, these are all new advances that are driving forward. But probably most importantly, what's new is the audience that we have access to. We have a business-level audience. We have government-level folks that are looking at how they really energize their global economy and how they compete on a global scale by investing in digitizing manufacturing. So we have a new audience. We have a whole bunch of new things that are hitting us with these technologies. But the core foundation, as you'll see from some of the research we're going to push through here in a second, drives us back to a commonality that we are all familiar with, and that is data off of the plant floor. So we put, for the Mesa Working Group's perspective, the umbrella of smart manufacturing, so that we can drive some commonality and understanding of what all of these pieces mean. On the earlier slide, I sort of splattered some of the terminology that's listed here all over the map. And from our perspective, we organize them in this way to put smart manufacturing at the top. Industry 4.0, as I mentioned, is a German strategy at a governmental level. And at the U.S., there's a focus on smart manufacturing. That there's the National Network of Manufacturing Innovation Institutes, or the NNMIIs, are starting to roll out And that's something that very directly Mesa and CSIA are working together on to try to support and make that a reality, not only in the U.S., but globally. But again, we put that under the umbrella of smart manufacturing, along with things like digital manufacturing, the industrial Internet of Things as a foundation. So this is really our structural thing, and why moving forward, I'll use the terminology of smart manufacturing, but understand that it encompasses everything that we are talking about in these different areas. So I mentioned that what I want to share over the next couple of minutes is some research studies and some work that the Mesa Working Group is doing to take these studies, these findings, and turn them into actionable pieces that we can all move driving forward. And so there's a research study that was done recently in Germany where Industry 4.0 is championed. And the next couple slides are going to highlight the findings of that. And so you may question, do you care about what's going on in Germany? And I think that the answer is you should. And I think that manufacturers are, and manufacturers, that the Industry 4.0 type of discussion is absolutely driving things outside of its borders. It's having impacts in China and impacts in the U.S. and other places. And it breaks down into, I think, quite simply a couple of points here. As you can see, going around the circle, starting with number one, is digitizing and integrating vertical and horizontal value chains. So, again, we've been talking about that for a long time, but digitizing the operations, so across the supply chain, the plan, make, source, deliver, as well as vertically inside of business, and integrating the different, the manufacturing department with the sales department, with the R&D department, with the business leadership, having the understanding and the ability to really tie all of the different moving parts together, horizontally and vertically. Number two, talking about digitizing the product and service portfolio. So smart manufacturers can be smart by taking new approaches to existing products. A lot of companies are looking at how they can understand what's happening with their products when they're out in the field, and use that to create new service models, new service level agreements, and such. That is really a huge opportunity for manufacturers of the products themselves. Different than necessarily what's happening on the plant floor, but very real towards the value of understanding things from a digital perspective. Number three is the innovative digital business models. You see companies today, if you've been watching any NFL games this year in the U.S., you'll see General Electric branding themselves as a digital company, and their chairman is going around the world talking about the business models that they are leveraging and creating to take advantage of the modern digital age. And if you look at the boundaries around the model here, it talks about data and analytics as a core capability, right? And so again, that's why I drive this back to the point that that Jose started the conversation with today. Making sense out of the data, collecting the data that's happening in manufacturing, in production operations, and being able to analyze that as a core capability, being able to get that information out to other places, is foundational to this story. In this case, around Internet of Things and Industry 4.0, and we'll talk a little bit more about other areas as well. But before we do that, just to reinforce the point about the value of data. This is from that same report, talking in today's terms. The bar on the left of each one of these slides, or each one of these bar charts, is the value that people in different industries, so there are 5 different industries represented here. But what is the importance of the analysis and use of data for the business model? And you can see today on the left, and in the lighter colored box on the right, is in 5 years. And you can see that every single industry represented here shows that they see significant value in understanding, collecting, analyzing, and using the data to drive their businesses forward. And there's some variation across the industries, but you can see that everybody across all the industry sectors absolutely sees value in digitizing their operations and understanding what they're doing better. So this is the sort of the key findings of that survey, and I know this is difficult to read, so I'll blow it up a little bit bigger so we can see some of the key points of this. The first point at the very top there calls out that the industrial internet transforms the entire company and must be part of the CEO agenda. To me, this is really the biggest point that of all of this discussion nowadays. As somebody who has spent 2+ decades in this space, and trying to make the argument for digitizing operations, for getting your arms around your operational effectiveness, getting your arms around performance, making your plants reliable and a competitive asset for you. What we have always struggled with has been that connection to the business leaders that says we are worth investing in. And you'll see that people are starting to make that push now and have that conversation at the highest levels of the organizations to say you need to invest in digitizing your plant operations. They're also investing in those other areas I mentioned, the new business models and digitizing their products and such. But we have to make sure that we are working together so that people understand that they can't skip the plant floor pieces of it. The other pieces here talk about the type of value that they bring, the scope of the impact. So they're talking by 2020 in Europe, they'll be able to invest. People will be investing $140 billion per year in applications specific to this type of environment. I don't think the number is as important in this discussion as it is the fact that there's significant growth projected in these areas, so companies at the highest level are paying attention to them. And probably the final point I'll make on this is the third point from the top to the right. In 5 years, more than 80% of the companies will have digitized their value chains. So that says that this is coming, that this is happening now, that people are looking to invest. That doesn't guarantee anybody on this webinar today that you're about to get rich, because if we put up roadblocks, if we behave as we've always behaved in the past, I think that we stand a very real chance of missing here and being excluded from what's in front of us. But if we work together and we, again, show that that we are people that can and deserve to and have value in being part of this discussion, I think there's a significant opportunity for all of us involved. So to transition off of that report, and I'll come back and come back to the summary findings of that report and ground that again for us one last time as we move forward. This is another report that was created actually 2 years ago by Cisco, and what they talk about capturing the value at stake is what they call it. So they have gone through and looked at the top industries and the degree of impact on the different industries through 5 different levers of where they think the Internet of Everything can have an impact. And they quantify that as being a $14.4 trillion global economic impact. And their definition of Internet of Everything is where all of the Internet of Things devices that are out there and proliferating our lives on every level move from just being standalone devices to being integrated contributors toward the operations of these different industries. So as these start to get connected, because I believe their estimates are still that 99.4% of all of the things in the Internet of Things today are still not connected. And so there's an enormous opportunity to connect them and to tie them into the business processes of these different industries and drive them forward. And when we look, this great big bubble out on the right, it represents manufacturing, right? And so it is the single largest industry by the estimates of Cisco for the value at stake in the future of the Internet of Everything. They estimate it to be at 27% of that $14.4 trillion number, which is a staggering $3.8 trillion that they attribute to the opportunity in manufacturing to connect and collect and make sense out of all of the data that is out there that we can harness. I don't know if this is a cynical side of me or if it's just a reality. I think part of what we can all say is that one of the reasons that manufacturing still stands as a huge opportunity is because it has been under-invested in over the past 2 decades. We still have so many things that are not connected, not networked, not ready to participate at this level and primed to be connected through all these technology advances because we haven't been, the businesses have not been effectively connecting with them and investing in this in the past. But again, that's probably a cynical view, but I think the reality is that, again, this is the kind of stuff that businesses are talking about at the highest level of their organizations. They're looking at these types of numbers and they're saying, how do I go forward and how do I take a path forward to realize some value for my business? Again, to anchor us down to what we do, to anchor us down to the plant floor, and keep the conversation from simply being in those other areas about new business models and digitizing products that are out, globally. If you look at where Cisco, in that quote down in the bottom right here, talks about the specific use case from manufacturing really comes from creating greater agility and flexibility in the factories and making the most of the workers' skills. That is a critical part of this. The people that are involved in manufacturing, that is where, from these types of numbers, from these discussions, people are saying, okay, business leaders, you need to have a strategy. You need to have a plan to invest in your manufacturing operations. And to that point about the people, it is consistent with some research that we have done at Mesa. We did research last year with SCM World out of Europe, and this is one of the findings that we found. Asked the question about the expectations of how the factory of the future is going to look 5 years and beyond, giving people the options there in red to talk about it being a lights-off facility. We don't need people anymore, to being the second point of people being at the center of an automated factory, to the third point of micro factories and people making their own products. And you can see that the respondents came back overwhelmingly with the 76% of people believing that people will be at the center of the automated factory. They will be using these technologies to help people do their jobs better, to be knowledge workers, to run their processes better. And that is a huge piece of this. And maybe as important to my earlier point about business leaders and their perspective, this slide specifically was used last year at an industry conference that I was at, the Industry Week Best Plants Conference, One of the chief operating officers of a manufacturer got up and talked about their vision for the factory of the future, and they pulled this slide up and said that they believe with this, they believe in this directly, that they're investing in making their people smarter. And so the fact that it's not as important that Mesa did some research and I'm showing you our findings as it is that business leaders are looking at these types of findings and saying that their strategy aligns with these types of findings. So just to finish out on where SCM World took those findings and their positioning of the journey towards the future, they really talk about the focus in the past on the left-hand side versus the focus to the right in the future and where things are. And we all know that the focus in the past on capacity and controlling, your labor costs, focused on capacity fulfillment, your productivity, et cetera, through mass customization. And today the move is, I don't even want to say toward this, because so much of the focus on the right we have been working on and helping implement and taking people on the journey for many, many years. So it's not like it's new. It's not like it's brand new. However, the focus is not so much on fulfilling capacity as it is fulfilling customer requirements. And so that's based on knowledge workers in a digital factory, giving the company the agility and responsiveness to respond to their customers' needs. And even if we look at what customer fulfillment means today versus what customer fulfillment can mean a few years from now, that is even changing. It's not as much today about just fulfilling the customer order as ordered. People are now watching social media. They're getting more real-time interaction, more real-time feedback from the customers who are buying their orders or buying their products, and redefining that in real time. So people are saying, okay, you ordered something, you got it, you used it, but guess what? Even though it was built to specification and shipped on time the way you wanted it, it really doesn't do exactly what you wanted it to do. And so that means you're getting shorter life cycles, you're getting faster turnaround times, new products hitting the market faster, and that's just going to continue to escalate. And I think as this next image shows from continuation of that work, it drives that message, that high-level message, that focus on what smart manufacturing is and what the future of manufacturing looks like, down back to the plant floor level. If we can't give the companies, the manufacturers, the agility and responsiveness that they need, then they cannot meet those changes. They can't keep up with the demand, the changing demand for their customer base. And again, this is just a digital this is just a representation from those findings from the report from SCM World that talks about a plant floor automation and robotics layer with information technologies and real-time data used to drive knowledge workers and develop the people, the skills, and the talents. I'm not a big fan of hierarchy type graphics and such. I think this is a very neat and clean way to drive this discussion. And again, back to the point of us collaborating here together, I really think that we need to make sure that it's grounded in a focus on what's happening in production, what's happening at the automation level, how that translates up into business value at the higher levels. So I think it's a neat and clean way for us to drive those discussions. SCM World went on beyond the research that we had done with them and focus on trying to understand from the marketplace what game-changing technologies are out there, what impact they have today. And I think, again, this provides a pretty clear, neat way, neat as in visually neat, not neat that I think this is a neat thing to wax philosophical about. But the Internet of Things as a way to connect all of the things that are out there, the cloud as a way to put the data that is being produced by those things, to remove some of the barriers that we have from a scalability perspective and such, and then start to analyze that data, big data analytics, specific applications. And you'll see some of the things that are listed here are not new by any stretch, right? So barcodes, mobile devices, RFIDs, et cetera, those are things that everybody on the webinar today is very familiar with, been deploying for some time. Nothing new there. But it does have an impact, and these are sort of fundamental building stones for what people are trying to accomplish at a higher level. So just the last slide here from this research is a look at the level of disruption with these different technologies on your left-hand side of the y-axis, and then across the bottom the plans, like where people stand from an investment priority perspective. With everything on the left is currently in use, and then as you start to move to the right, people that are piloting these types of technologies and planning to invest in less than 3 years, or they have no plans to invest in less than 3 years. And again, this is a manufacturing audience. And you can see where the different pieces fall. Mobile applications in the top left-hand side, right? A very disruptive technology and currently being used. Probably everybody that's on the webinar today is doing things with mobile technologies. Same with RFID, barcodes, et cetera. Very mature type of technologies that people are using. You start to move to the right, and you'll get into things like big data analytics, the cloud down there near the bottom in the piloting phase, and that's consistent with what we see people doing. We see people piloting and starting to use cloud solutions. We see big data analytics being piloted, people looking at it. And if you look in all the way to the right-hand side, the top right-hand side, you'll see the Internet of Things squarely out there with a real unknown at this point. People don't know how to really take advantage of that, or investing in it specifically as an initiative versus it being just a part of a foundational part of what it is that they are doing. So I said earlier that I would come back to that Industry 4.0 recommendations, and that's what's listed here. And so to get people started, to buy into and find value and recognize value that you find in this high-level government-led strategy to bolster up Germany as a foundation, Europe overall, and manufacturing globally, they break it down into 3 specific paths or steps on the path to digitization. Number 1 is give all things a name. Number 2 is measure, measure, measure. And number 3 is connect and analyze. But if we look at these pieces, talk about the first step, giving all things a name. Talk about digitizing and connecting products and the data that can be collected. Right? So the data that you can collect about the products being manufactured in the manufacturing processes and the value of collecting that data. Jose opened up by talking today about measuring and understanding where manufacturers are in their production. So the ability to measure all process and sensor data. Again, everybody on the phone here or on the webcast today is doing these types of things. And then the third point, connecting and analyzing. Again, having the manufacturing process data as part of the overall strategy and foundational piece to doing this. Again, I take the claim that they are speaking our story. They're singing our song. So just a final point here, my last slide, and then we will open it up for question and answer. So I'd remind everybody that if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box in your computer. Back to the working group that Mesa is working on, the Smart Manufacturing Working Group, and what our group has come up with. This is a roadmap, a draft roadmap at this point. We're working on how do we document this? How do we show people? I mentioned earlier that there was a hierarchy, and I'm not big on the hierarchy kind of structure, especially with today as walls come down between technologies and those sorts of things. And really, if you look, it's not an overly complicated roadmap. Starting at the highest level from a business strategy perspective, and this is, again, the key link, I believe. If we can't talk at the plant level in a business value context perspective, then we're not going to get we're not going to be part of that strategic business focus, right? So we need to make sure that we can and do tie the business strategy down through to the operations and things that are happening down at the lowest levels, at the production level. Below that, it's about empowering the teams, all sorts of different teams, all different levels of the organization, all with access to data and information and knowledge, empowered through these types of technologies. Streamlined processes. Again, as barriers come down between departments, you're going to see the business processes be the driver that drive people to try to focus on how they improve their processes, even though those processes go across departmental boundaries and even across company boundaries, across supply chain, across the overall value chain. And then obviously there are technology pieces that are part of the discussion. So we have to figure out how this stuff happens. What are the connective technologies that we use? What are the connected things that fit in? And so we're working to sort of map those all out and give people a path forward so that they can find where they are and how they move forward. But this is very early for us in this stage again, this is sort of our thinking of how today's focus on smart manufacturing maps to the real world and the landscape of where we are. So with that, I am going to conclude my remarks. As mentioned previously, with us on the phone is Keith Unger from Stone Tech. And as Jose mentioned, he is he and his company are active members in both CSIA and in Mesa International. So I will ask Keith if he could take our first question here and just comment on his perspective of where this topic fits and the opportunity for those in the systems integrated community. So Keith, if you could please comment for us.
Hi, this is Keith Unger. We're open for questions now, and as been mentioned, Stone Technologies is a member of both Mesa and CSIA. A little background on me: I've been in the consulting integration services business for essentially my entire career, which is now over 35 plus years, and I've been at Stone Technologies for the last 13. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be quite happy to give a shot at answering them.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Keith. Watching the Q&A box here, we do have one question, which I believe is off of our off of the graphic that's up on the slide right now. It asks about the standards around B2B and A2A, and asks for a definition of what A2A is, and that is actually stands for application to application. So as we look at the reality of where we are from a plant systems perspective, we have a lot of isolated applications built for their own functions, and the vision is that those applications moving forward would have standard ways that they could share information, they could share data amongst them versus the custom-coded hardwire that we tend to do things today. There's another question that came in that I would like to sort of specific to the Smart Manufacturing Institute and work that we're collaborating on together with CSIA. For those of you that are not familiar, within the U.S., there is a governmental initiative. You can go to manufacturing.gov and find out all about it. A series of institutes. The first institute was started, a public-private institute in Youngstown, Ohio, around 3D printing. There are, I believe, 7 of them currently. One launched this past May in Chicago called the Digital Manufacturing and Design Innovation Institute, or the DMDII. And there is another one which is out for bid right now from the Department of Energy called the Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Institute. And so the Department of Energy is trying to leverage advances in manufacturing to provide energy savings on a large scale. The institute is, again, really centered on this discussion that we've been having here today. So Mesa has been involved with another nonprofit called the Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition, and they are bidding on that institute. If we go back to that original slide that I had at the top about the 3 pillars, and we talk about the practitioner readiness, that is an area that for about the last year, Mesa and CSIA have been talking about how we make that a reality and the role we show the value to those governmental leaders and the industry coalition that has come together to show the value of making sure that the practitioners are prepared. So that is something that is happening in real time. The bid for that institute from the bidding teams is due at the end of January. They expect sometime in the middle of May to announce the team that's at the forefront of that, and then potentially by the end of next year, by this time next year, they would actually launch a Smart Manufacturing Institute.
I see we have another question. I'll be happy to take that. How do we bridge the grand vision with the day-to-day work? Well, with any new disruptive technology, I think the very first step is to, one, become educated about what the topic is. And the fact that you're attending this webinar is a good sign that you are hearing things and you're taking the steps to become educated, which is what I believe is the very first step. At some point, though, you've actually got to start devoting some time on the business strategy. That's probably the second step. Without having the attention that as part of what is your business trying to achieve, you will not find any way really to work that into your day-to-day business. And then you'll have to put together some sort of a team to be empowered to implement that strategy. And ultimately it will become part of your day-to-day business.
Yeah, Keith, I would certainly agree with that. And talk back from our perspective, I mentioned earlier from a Mesa perspective, we started our global education program 4 years ago, trying to establish a global baseline of knowledge, and that's another area where we continue to try to evolve that training and add more to it. But really, we need to get people with that common baseline of knowledge. So look for areas to engage. Certainly, there's room inside of Mesa for domain experts like yourselves to contribute, to get educated, to start to do the things as Keith was talking about. So we would certainly welcome people from that perspective. So as we look here, I don't see any other questions in the Q&A box. I'll pause for just a minute. If anybody has any other specific questions, we are glad to answer them. If not, I will turn the floor back over to Jose, who I know has a few closing comments for everybody. Again, I would thank everybody for their time and attention today, and look forward to continuing to work together with CSIA moving forward.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Keith. To all the attendees, thank you for your participation. My hope is that you have several takeaways. Mike, thank you very much for the contribution of your time and expertise. Your presentation was very insightful. We wish the best to you and Mesa, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration. Keep up the good work, and look forward to having another webinar of this series. Keith, thank you for your participation in the Q&A session. You provided a lot of credibility by being a simultaneous member of Mesa and CSIA. Thanks again to our host and sponsor, John Weber and Monica Anderson of Software Toolbox. Be sure to complete the survey for today's webinar. But before I let you go, please take a look and mark your calendar, because on December 3rd, we're going to have our December webinar. I realize that it's a short period between now and December 3rd, but December is a special month with all the holidays. It is a business webinar on positioning security with your customers as a resilient and reliability opportunity. So it is probably a different spin to what you have heard in the past. So be sure to complete the survey for today's webinar. You will be directed to it automatically at the end of this webinar. It only takes 30 seconds to complete. Your feedback is necessary for our continuous improvement for the presenter and for CSIA. In closing, here are two important considerations. Number one is, whilst there is plenty of buzz around IoT, smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, there are real drivers behind it. And early and active involvement by system integrators in this growing trend will allow leverage of what promises to be a huge opportunity. My question to you, is your company on board with this? And finally, if you have a suggested topic for webinars, please include in your comments. This is Jose Rivera, CSIA CEO. Thanks again for attending, and goodbye.